What is going on, guys? This is Jake at That Fit Friend, and today I'm going to be doing an unboxing, first impressions, and a post-workout breakdown in the Puma Fuse 2. I will have a full review out for this shoe in the very near future, so definitely stay tuned for that. But I want to get this video up because I've had now a few folks reach out on both Instagram and in the comments on different videos asking about the Puma Fuse 2 and if they should go for it, if they should hold off on a certain model and instead go with the Fuse 2. So I wanted to put up some content on this model. So let's go ahead and unbox this model. Box is pretty beat up because they are not out in the US, so I bought them from overseas. I think it was Sole Trader UK, and DHL always beats up the box of the shoes that I get shipped overseas. So I have personally been super excited about the Puma Fuse 2 because I think the market is in need of a budget-friendly shoe that can hold its own for CrossFit. So not everybody wants to drop like $130 to $150 for something like a Nike Metcon 8 or a Haze trainer. So having an option on the market that retails at a lower price point, but also doesn't break down right away and can hold its own for different workouts, I think is super important, and it helps add to the ability of people to get really good shoes for the style of training that they're after. So looking at the Puma Fuse 2, there are two things that I'm curious about. Number one, the sole construction and if it's a little bit better compared to the Puma Fuse. And then number two, if they kind of tweaked some of the issues that the Puma Fuse had with durability. So for example, in the Puma Fuse, they had some issues with rope climbing, especially on the midfoot, and they would kind of start to tear apart at the sole. So I'm curious if the Puma Fuse 2 has fixed this. Looking at this model right out of the gate, it looks like the midfoot issue that the original Puma Fuse had may be fixed with the construction of this model. So we have a lateral outsole and medial wrap here, like a lot of other shoes have, like the Tier CXT1 trainer, the Nike Metcon 7 and 8. Some of the Noble trainers have a little bit of a bias here on the midfoot for rope climbing. So it's cool to see them implement this. And it doesn't feel like a material that's gonna break down right away. It feels like a stickier rubber. And this rubber also extends around the toe box too. So it does have this like more grippy rubber texture to it. Looking at the upper construction, it looks like we have a reworked mesh and textile and synthetic upper here. So we do have a synthetic overlay around the toe box. The toe guard isn't super thick, but the width actually seems pretty good in this model. I'm curious to see how it's gonna fit because obviously holding it isn't gonna do it justice in regard to how it actually physically fits my foot, but the forefoot does look decently wide, or at least wider than other models on the market to accommodate different foot anatomy. So I'm curious to see how it fits. And it also looks like the entirety of the heel has been reworked. So in this model now, it looks like we have a little bit of a beveling with the heel. We now have a TPU clip back here for handstand push-up assistance. And it looks like the heel itself has a slightly beefier cup down here at the bottom of it. Up here through the upper, it also has a little bit of a rigid cup as well. So the last thing that I'm interested in with the Puma Fuse 2 is the insole construction. So in the Puma Fuse, what gave that model its general comfort and its responsiveness was the insole. It had a thicker foam insole. So I'm curious if Puma left that the same or changed it in this model, and it looks like they left it the same. So we still have a thicker foam insole in the Puma Fuse 2. When you take that out, you're pretty much left with a super mobile shoe that's pretty much just rubber separating the foot from the floor. So the insole is once again where you're gonna get the responsiveness and comfort in this model. It's kind of similar to the Nike Zoom Metcon Turbo 2 that delivers its responsiveness and comfort from its thicker React foam insole. So what I'm low-key thinking now is that if you took this insole out and replaced it with a thinner insole from a different shoe, how that would feel in the Puma Fuse 2. Would it give you more stability? Would it totally take away from the shoe's responsiveness? How would it feel in regard to its stack height? Just food for thought, and just kind of where my head goes with these thick insoles. I'm always curious like how you can kind of curate the perfect fit and shoe for you based on your wants and needs if you don't necessarily resonate with like these thicker insoles in some of these models. But that all being said, I have a squat workout today with some lower body accessories and some plyos, so perfect day to be testing the Puma Fuse 2, honestly. But I will see you guys for the post-workout breakdown. I'll share some thoughts on my first workout in the shoe before my full review goes live in the future. So I started out today's workout with some nice passive assault bike work. This helps get the blood flowing, elevate the heart rate, and also get some passive thoracic rotation work in. I wanted to share some thoughts on this workout and kind of like why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I just think that's really interesting. I love when other athletes and coaches do the same. And so I just started a new hybrid block, so I am blending more running in with my training. I ran a 5K last night before this session the following morning, so my legs were a little bit tired, so it was nice being able to actually squat and do some power movements on tired legs. So for my first coupling of movements, it was basically building up to a triple on the back squat with a 3-second eccentric around 70 to 75%, and then following that with some box jumps. The goal of this was to control the squats, come out of them with really good form, but then also with the box jumps, not making the box so high that it's a struggle. So the goal was to pretty much do these with almost fairly straight legs landing, just to make sure that I was actually able to get enough power stimulus without pushing it too hard, because once again, this is my first week here, and boy, these squats felt a lot harder than they probably should have, because I was pretty tired from both my deadlift session earlier this week and then also the run last night. So that being said, if you find yourself more interested in hybrid training, I would highly suggest easing into the volume of the additional running with your lifting for your first few blocks. Trust me, you don't want to send it too hard in the first blocks and set yourself back further, because you're just beating yourself up. Running is going to take a ton of durability on top of the lifting, and you're going to have to get used to the demands of both of those components when you're blending them together. After the squats and box jumps, I went into this contralateral rear foot elevated split squat with a slight internal rotation bias. So this is a movement I've been playing with more and more and just kind of feeling out. Is it the best, most optimal movement? I'm still testing it a lot and getting more data, but it's been really fun to play with. And then I headed into this single leg box jump where I was essentially loading the hip almost in the similar movement pattern that I was just doing that rear foot elevated split squat in, and focusing on driving through the ball of the foot there. So with this variation, I'm thinking about really loading that hip and creating a little bit of internal rotation without having to do any additional mobility work. I like the support there with the dowel because it helps me focus on not getting too into that hip and coming over. Like, as you can see, I'm still doing it a little bit. So it's something that I'm constantly working on, but it's an exercise that I've been playing with more and more, trying to basically drive internal rotation in a more passive way without having to do a ton of mobility to get the benefits there. So after that, I did another set of these single leg box jumps. And then for my final movements, I did this kickstand glute bridge here with a dumbbell, kept it a little bit lighter, focused more so on the tempo and just moving nice and smooth. I did these for 15, so the volume was a little high. And honestly, these were perfect for getting in some quality work without overdoing it before the hike tomorrow, because once again, I was not trying to be sore before this 14er. I then coupled that with these Russian kettlebell swings with a band around the waist. I do these to focus on violent hip extension, but also they're a great conditioning component in my opinion too. So going from that more controlled hip extension with that glute bridge and then pairing it with this more violent hip extension, I love it as a pairing. And also let me know if you like this VO, but now back to the first impressions.
All right guys, welcome to the post-workout breakdown of the Puma Fuse 2. So 4 quick thoughts with this model is, number 1, I like the new sizing with the shoe. So with the Puma Fuse 2 compared to the Puma Fuse 1, we have a reworked last construction. So the forefoot and midfoot are a little bit wider in the 2, and it seems like the upper volume has been increased a little bit. An issue that folks had with the Puma Fuse 1 is that it just felt super narrow through the midfoot and forefoot. The 2 feels a little bit better. Now I will say it does feel pretty low profile in nature with this upper, and that's because the insole is still so thick. So when you first put these on, they will probably feel a little bit snug. They felt a tiny bit snug on me, but they broke in pretty easily and pretty quickly at that. It literally took one workout and they felt fine after my first couple of sets. And also I think if you're wearing thinner socks, that shouldn't be a huge issue. Second thought with this model is that I like the upper construction in this shoe. So it's somewhat similar to the Puma Fuse in regard to its overall design. However, there is a slightly different curation of the elements used in this model. There's less of like this plasticky synthetic material on the lateral side. And when it comes to the toe box and the upper itself providing security, I liked it overall, especially for plyometrics. So upper security in the shoe, I think, should be a pretty good thing for most folks. Another quick thought that I have with this model is that I'm still not a huge fan of the insole in this shoe. And so there's 2 reasons why I'm not the biggest fan of this. So number 1, it's so thick that it pushes you up into the upper of the shoe. So once again, I already mentioned this, but the upper volume in this model could be a little bit better, even though it has been increased from the Puma Fuse. I think if Puma, if you're watching this, if you brought this down a little bit and even made it just a tiny bit more dense, I think this insole would be way better for cross training and lifting, because that takes me to my second point on this insole, is that when I was even walking back squats with just 315, I was feeling this heel compress a little bit. And so I'm not sure if I would prefer like having less material and a denser material at that consistently throughout, or just a denser like midfoot to a heel while I'm squatting and while I'm lifting, and then maybe more pliable or responsive forefoot with this insole. I think that could be a good thing. But I did notice a little bit of compression with this heel when walking out squats, and that was only at 315. Now granted, when I was training and when I was actually lifting and squatting, it wasn't the hugest deal, but you do notice it because that foam is so thick in this model's insole. The fourth quick thought that I have with this shoe is that it breathes pretty well, and I do like the mobility of the forefoot. So I do like how much this model gripped the floor. I didn't have any issues on turf so far. I didn't have any issues on rubber gym floors, and it gripped really well for my squats, and it does have a nice level of maneuverability. So I do think a lot of folks are gonna like the articulation of this shoe, and honestly, as a budget-friendly cross-training shoe, I think this could be a really viable option. Now, I have some more serious testing to do in this shoe. I need to rope climb in them. I need to put them through more CrossFit workouts, and I want to do some heavier cleans and pulls in them, and some heavier squats at that. Today was more of a hybrid day where I was blending like light to moderate strength work with some plyos, so I haven't been able to test them super hardcore for CrossFit and cross training yet, or serious lifting. But again, I'll have a full review for you very soon. But if you have any questions in the meantime, and if you're thinking about pulling the trigger on these shoes before I get that review up, drop a comment down below. I'll try to answer whatever questions you have. And as always, guys, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one.